Jesus went up on a hill with his 12 disciples. Say hello, 12 disciples.
Hello, narrator.
A large crowd was following Jesus because he was healing people. Men, women, and even children followed him up to this hill. It was getting late, and the people were getting hungry.
We're all getting hungry.
Especially me.
A disciple said to Jesus,
Lord, the people are hungry and it's getting late.
and Jesus replied, "What food do you have, 12 disciples?"
We have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. That's barely enough for a sandwich for us. Even less the way Bartholomew eats.
Hey.
So Jesus took the food, blessed it,
Father, please bless this food.
broke it into pieces, and gave it to the disciples to distribute throughout the crowd. All the people ate as much as they wanted. There were even leftovers.
Wow, everyone here is full when there are even leftovers.
So Jesus got baskets for the disciples to put leftovers in.
Lord, where'd you get those from?
Didn't you see me multiply the fish and bread? I can do all things. This is only one sign I show you to prove that I am the Son of God.
So everyone was happy and the crowd went home for the night. There were over 5,000 people there, not even counting the women and children.
Aww.
Here we go. Good morning. Good morning, free worship. Obviously, you know what the deal is today. Do I need to go into my little wine session or not? I told John a minute ago in the back, I said, you think this will get easier as you do this, but it doesn't. It does not get any easier. Brandon was laughing this morning. He said, I wouldn't have asked you to play guitar today if I'd have known. This is a little hot in the monitors. And I told him, I said, being up here will probably keep my mind off of what is to come. So if I look a little pale or whatever, this light, I don't know if you can tell or not, but it's one of those mornings. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you, first-time guests. Thank you, Praise Band. They do a good job. For those of you who may not know, I like to do this. A lot of you do know me, but my name is Kip Gullidge. I am the creative pastor here. Our pastor is out of town this weekend, and it fell in my lap, unfortunately. Thank you. I do appreciate that, by the way. The last time that I was up here, I prophesied that it was going to be a couple more years before I had to get back up here, but it's only been a couple of months, I think. But my mother was here. My mother made the comment, she was telling somebody that I had preached. She said, oh, Kip preached. Well, Kip really doesn't preach as much as Kip likes to take what the God has said to him and try to relay it in some fashion. And I like that description because that's what I try to do. I try to take life events and things that I understand and try to explain it. Sometimes it's crazy. I mean, the Lego. But I'm going to try that again today. And I've got my notes right here. Jennifer, did you know it was me today? The last time I did this, I had a video, and Jennifer said she reached over and whispered to one of her sons, I know it's Kip today because he's got one of those crazy videos. So. Okay, the video. Now, everybody knows the story, feeding the 5,000. At least most people do. If you've spent any time in church, I grew up in Southern Baptist from that. And we had Bible school, and we had Sunday school, and we had any other kind of school they could get us into. And one of the staples was the feeding of the 5,000, the loaves and the fish. And the reason that I used the video that I used, because it's more of a kid-like, kids connect with it. You can ask probably a lot of children in here. They'll know that story if they don't know anything else. But I've come to find the more time that I spend in the Word, and more time I spend studying, a lot of the stuff that I learned as a child, it's not necessarily wrong, but now as I've gotten older, it tends to be fairy tale-ish. I don't know how to say it other than that. I don't want to call the Bible stories fairy tales, but it has qualities that there's more to it. As I get older, I realize there's more to these stories than just what they told us as a child. Probably we couldn't handle it at the time. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do a little disclaimer here. If you are a Bible scholar, if you are somebody who is going to hold me down to the very letter of it, then you're probably going to be disappointed today, because some of the things that I'm going to say, I can't tell you necessarily I can put my finger on in the Bible. But I believe them are true, and I'm going to try to show you why I believe they're true. The Bible's told from the point of view of different people. Different people have written these books, and we see their point of view. But you have to understand at the time when this was being written, there was a lot of other points of view going on. There was a lot of other things going on other than this one person's experience at that time. I'm going to try to bring that out a little bit. If I were to ask for a show of hands right now, who knows the name Paul Harvey? More of you than I expected, quite frankly. Paul Harvey was, for those of you who don't know, Paul Harvey was a radio personality. He did all kind of things. He was, back when I was a child, it seemed like an old man then, quite frankly. And a lot of times you would hear, just to give you kind of a reference to him, he liked to end his radio shows, whatnot, with, "This is Paul Harvey, good day." And he had a distinctive voice. When you heard it, you knew it was him. Well, he did a radio show quite often that I love to hear, called The Rest of the Story. Anybody remember that? What he would do is he would take a story and he would give you facts to that story that you didn't know. And by the end of the story, it ended up being a story you've already known, but you didn't know the facts earlier, and you were like, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that." I mean, he brought it together. I'm hoping that I can do something similar to that today for you with this story. Now, this story, to give you a little background, whatever, is one of only 2 miracles in the Bible which is told in all 4 of the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Each one of these tells the story from a different perspective. There's only 2 times in the Bible that's happened. One is the resurrection, one is this story. Now, what do we know? Now, if you were to ask a kid right now, what can you tell me about this story? They're going to tell you probably there was a big crowd of people that came to hear Jesus. And in the course of the day while they were listening to Jesus, they got hungry. And they found a little boy in the crowd who had 5 loaves and 2 fish. And Jesus then took that, broke it into pieces, and they ended up feeding this whole crowd and had leftovers. It was a miracle. That sound pretty straightforward? I mean, that's what you know? Well, I believe if we look at it a little closer, there's a little more to it than that. First thing I want you to understand is the way this started out, the way this situation started out. We think that, okay, if T.D. Jakes were going to be here today, if T.D. Jakes was going to be somewhere in Chirral for a couple of weeks, we'd have flyers up saying what time, where, how to get tickets to go. It would have been, a big production. It was not like this. It was not a big thing going on that they were promoting and Jesus was going to be speaking and all these people came out. Here's what happened. Jesus, sometime earlier, had been baptized by his cousin, John the Baptist. This was the beginning of his ministry. If you remember at the time, the heavens opened up, dove came down, they heard God's voice say, "This is my son who I am well pleased." Pretty monumental thing that he shared with his cousin, John the Baptist. Well, Jesus has just found out that his cousin has been killed. He's been beheaded. And it grieved him. It hurt him. And so he calls the disciples together and he said, "Listen, guys, we need a break. We need to get away for a little while. You guys, we need to talk about some things. Probably you got questions and whatnot. So go down, get the boat ready, and we're going to take a little trip. We're going to get out of town for a little while." And so they did that. They went down and they started preparing the boat and everything. And Jesus came down. They got in the boat and they shoved off on their way. Here's the thing though. Jesus at the time was on the rise. People were starting to take notice. His ministry was picking up. And kind of like the paparazzi of today, if you will, when somebody makes a move, somebody famous, all of a sudden it was like, oh, what are they doing? Where are they going? What's fixing to happen? So all of a sudden, these people start whispering and saying, hey, we need to, Jesus is doing something. We don't know what he's doing, but we need to go out and find and follow him. So all of a sudden, they started following. Now, it reminded me at the time of, I don't know if you guys saw the Forrest Gump movie, but Forrest Gump at one point in the movie decides he's going to get up and run. He just says, I just decided to run. So he takes off, and he runs, and he runs, and he runs, and everybody says, are you running for this? Are you running for that? And he just says, I just like to run. And all of a sudden, people just start following him for no reason. They don't know why, but it's this mystique thing. This is what I kind of see, because all of a sudden, Jesus is in the boat with the disciples. They look out on the bank of the river, and over here, there's this gob of people following them on the bank. Now, the Bible says there was 5,000 men. They did not, in those days, they didn't count women and children. They did not. Bible scholars believe and will tell you that they estimate somewhere between 10 and 15,000 people were actually out there following on the bank. Now, that's a big crowd of people running him down on the bank. Jesus looks over and sees this, and it touches him. He feels for these people because they're chasing him down, you know. So he tells the disciples, he says, land the boat as soon as you can, land the boat. We got ministry to do. And so they do that. They take the boat on over to the edge, and they begin ministry. They're teaching, they're preaching, they're healing. They're just having a good old time, a camp meeting out there on the banks. Well, so far, you with me? Now, at this point, we don't know a lot about the crowd. The Bible doesn't tell us a whole lot other than the numbers that are there. I think it was a very diverse group. You take 15, 20,000 people, there's a lot of different characters. I mean, quite frankly, there's a lot of different characters in this room right now, and we don't nearly have those numbers. So if you take that many people and you mix them up in a crowd that size, you're going to have a diverse crowd. I think if we use just general human characteristics, I think we can talk about some of the people that were in that crowd, actually. You see, I think there were people there that day who came to worship Jesus. They knew who he was. They knew what he was about. They knew what he could do. And so they genuinely came that day just to get a little bit closer to him, just to get in his presence just a little bit more into worship. I think there was that crowd was there. I also think there was a crowd there of people who were curious. They didn't necessarily know who Jesus was, but they had heard about him. They had heard all kinds of things. And they weren't quite sure who he was or what he was or how he fit into their life. But they knew they wanted a little bit more. They just needed to find out a little bit more about him. And so they fell up in that crowd walking along the bank. I think there was a crowd of people there that day that were hungry. Now, there were people who were spiritually hungry. Some of them didn't even know it. Sometimes we don't know when we're spiritually hungry. We know there's something missing. We just don't know what it is. But I think there was people there that were physically hungry also. You see, when I lived in Miami years ago, one of the things that I learned real quick was the homeless and the people who were scrounging to survive or whatever. They would follow where the crowd was. They would like to go to the populated areas where the tourists like to go and all that, simply because there was an opportunity there to maybe ask somebody for help. There was an opportunity there to find things dropped, be it food or something valuable. There was opportunity to find food in trash cans and whatnot. But I mean, it's terrible. But I believe there was a crowd of people there that day that simply were in that crowd because they were physically hungry. And they saw that as an opportunity to fill their bellies. I think there were people there that day that the only reason that they were there is because they wanted to belong to the crowd. They saw this big wad of people moving. They didn't know why they were moving. They didn't know what was going on, but they thought, well, something's happening and I'm not missing out on this. So they fell up in the crowd and they started mingling and traveling and figuring out what was going on. Then I think there was a group of people there that day that their sole purpose for being there was to rob and to steal. Now that sounds bad, doesn't it? These people, they're here for Jesus. I mean, there were people who saw this as an opportunity to take advantage of others, be it pickpockets, be it waiting for somebody to put their, I don't think they carried purse back then, put their purse or whatnot down and snatch it when nobody's looking. But I do believe in a crowd that size, there were people there that had come to take. Now, you probably think I'm crazy. You may wonder, how in the world can you say this? Because it's not black and white. You can't find that in the Bible. You can't show me that. Number one, I think it's human character, that all these people would be in that crowd. But number two, I think it's a reflection of the church. I think if you take these people one by one, you may see yourself in there somewhere. You see, there were people there that day that came to worship. There are people here today. They've come to worship. They know Him as their Lord and Savior. They know what He can do. They know what He has done for them. And they want to get just a little bit closer to Him. There's people here today that may be here out of curiosity. They've heard about Him. They've heard their family or their friends or coworkers talk about this Jesus guy and coming to church and what it means to them. They don't know Him, but it sounds interesting. So we're going to come and sit down and we'll give it a try. We'll hear what they got to say. We'll see how it fits into our life. I think there's people here today that are hungry spiritually. Yes. There's people here today that they know they're missing something. They know they need something. They know they want something. You may not know what it is. You may know what it is. You may know what you need to do. But I also think there's people around us. There may be someone within arm's reach of you right now, believe it or not, that is physically hungry. It's amazing the number of people who need help to call and they just want something to eat. Now, pause button. I'm going to throw this in there for good measure. Lord put something on my heart a long time ago. I've told Chad, I'm going to do this. It's my dream, my goal, to start a food bank at this church. Here's what's going to happen. Just to give you heads up, because at one point I'm going to get up here when I've got it, and I'm speaking it now, so I have to do it, because I've talked about it long enough. I'm going to ask you at some point, it may be one Sunday out of the month, I don't know, bring me a canned good, bring me something perishable, and we're going to drop that into a bin or something. Whatever you can do, I'm going to ask you. If you're that, amen, let's do it. Then I'm asking you, let's get this put together. Let's get it done. Unpause. I think there was people there that day that wanted to belong to the crowd. I think there's people right here, right now, that they see something going on. They don't know Jesus. They don't know much about it. When I say here today, understand I'm talking about the church also all over the world. I'm not talking about just free worship. I think this is church in general all over the world. But there are people in church right now that they just want to belong to the crowd. That's the reason they're there. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not throwing off on that whatsoever. That's where they need to be. That's the ones we need to get a hold of. Christians, pay attention. They are around you. Do I think there are people here to rob and steal? I have a question for you. Do you think everybody that comes in those doors up yonder is here with pure intent and good intent? Would it break your heart if I told you it's not true? Unfortunately, in our church today, there are people who come to take. They want to rob your joy. They want to rob your happiness. They want to take from you. If you're in this room, and I'm not calling any names because I don't know, but if you are in this room today, and that is your goal, please let me let you know ahead of time you are wasting your time. Because the Bible tells us no weapon formed against us will prosper. So you are wasting your time. You can either find somewhere else to go or you can get with the program. I don't care. A word of warning, though. It's very easy if something doesn't go your way, if your feelings get hurt, if you get mad at somebody, if you think somebody's done you wrong. It's very easy to join that team. You may come in those doors with good intentions, but at some point, if you allow the devil to get up in your business and whisper things in your ear that you don't need to hear, you may leave on different terms. Anyway, I'm going to skip out of that and go back to our the story, if you will. At this point, they're ministering to the crowd. They're teaching, they're preaching, whatever. And at some point, the disciples come to Jesus and they say, Jesus, it's getting kind of late. And these people haven't eaten. They don't have anything to eat. And we need to send this crowd somewhere so they can grab something to eat, you know. Now, I believe this was the first sign in the Bible that the disciples were Southern Baptists. I mean, because Southern Baptists, I grew up Southern Baptists, are one of the worst ones. When the Lord's moving, they're going to look at their watch and say, it's time to eat. You got to cut this thing off. It don't matter if everybody in the house is getting saved and whatever. So I believe that's the first sign that the disciples were Southern Baptists. Anyway, they say, you know, we've got to feed this crowd. We've got to get them on down the road. Jesus looks at them and he says, nah, you feed them. What? What are you talking about? We don't have any food. We don't have anything for them. Philip pipes up and says, it's going to take weeks' worth of wages to buy a bite for each person, just a small bite. It would take, weeks and weeks of wages to do this. We can't do this. They just, you know. All of a sudden, Andrew shows up, and he's got a little boy. Now, bear with me here for a minute. As a 10-year-old in Bible school, to hear that the little boy shows up and he's got some bread and fish, ta-da, that's all well and good. As a 48-year-old man, I'm thinking there's something happened in between all of that. I'm sorry, but I want to fill in the blanks. I want to know more about that. Then allow me to try. If I say the name, pause, because I'm going to stay with me if you will, but pause. If I say the name Carowinds, that evokes a bunch of different emotions in this room. For you, and if the internet or if anybody possibly doesn't know what Carowinds is, I like to refer to it as Redneck Disney World around here because it's basically our amusement park locally. But you see what I mean? I'm young enough that I can remember when the mention of Carowinds got me excited. I'm fixing to go ride a roller coaster, or we're gonna run up and down this whatever. But I'm old enough now to know how expensive it's gonna be, how aggravating it's gonna be. I think they built the place on a volcano. I think there's a volcano in the North Carolina, South Carolina, because that has got to be the hottest place on earth when you're out there in July and August. As a kid, you don't care about that. You just, we're going to Carowinds. Now, how does Carowinds fit into this story, you ask? Well, again, as an adult, when I take my kids now and they want to eat a hot dog, I have to go out and take a second mortgage on the house to pay for $500 worth of hot dogs to feed 4 people. We didn't do that back when we were little. You know why? because Mama had a paper sack out in the car. Before we left the house, Mama packed that paper sack with hot dogs. And I did this on purpose because we ate many a hot dog out of a loaf of bread. My wife thinks that's the craziest thing in the world. If I cook hot dogs at the house and I don't have a hot dog bun, she thinks I have lost my mind, y'all. But it would have hot dogs. It might have a Kiss Cola. Does anybody know what Kiss Cola is? It's like a poor man's Pepsi. And ooh. But there'd be a paper sack in that car whenever it got time. This ain't just my mama. This is other people that I go with. I mean, their mamas did it when I went with them. But when you got hungry, they took you through that gate, and you walked 35 miles out in the parking lot to where the car was, and you broke out on the ground, and you ate your hot dog and drank you drink out of your cup. Or sometimes you had to share the cup. But my point is, we came prepared. We packed something and came prepared. When I was younger than that, my grandfather had a Volkswagen van. Y'all know what I'm talking about? It looked like a little mini bus, whatever. When we get out of church on Sunday afternoon, we loaded that van up, and we took off to Charlotte. Now, when you go to Charlotte now, we're going to the big malls and all that. We was going to Kmart. And we thought we was going to Taj Mahal, y'all. Kmart. And what ended up happening was I'd have to go sit in the cafeteria with my grandpa while everybody shopped. And he smoked a cigarette and, drank coffee or whatever. But we thought we was doing something. Now, what happened before we left that house? My grandmother went inside, and she took a green thermos, about yay big, and she filled that sucker up with ice water. And she made peanut butter crackers. And if you got hungry on that trip, there wasn't no drive-thrus, there wasn't no convenience stores, nothing. You ate a peanut butter cracker and you drank ice water. And if you had to use the bathroom, you either did it on the side of the road for God and everybody to see, or they gave you a glass Pepsi Cola bottle and told you to go to the back of the van. Y'all think I'm lying. I just seen my mama sitting back here, and I promise you, y'all think I'm lying, you ask her before she leaves here. But she left prepared. My grandma left prepared. Now, we got a bus coming on the way for free worship bus. It's going to be here soon. But if we loaded that bus up today and we were going to take that bus to Carowinds, it would hold like 75, 72 people. If 10% of the people on that bus packed a lunch, came prepared, that's 7 people on that bus. You're going to try to tell me that out of 15,000 people, maybe even 20,000, that one person, one little boy in that crowd came prepared. Here's where some of you might get upset with me, because I believe there was more food there that day than what that boy brought. It doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that that was the only food. It just says that's what they found and they brought to Jesus. The more I've read this, the more I've studied this, I'll tell you what I believe. I think there were a lot of people there that day that came prepared. You see, if 1%, I took 10% of the bus, but if 1% of 15 to 20,000 people prepared that day, they'd have still had 150 to 200 people with food. So what happened? If I'm right, what happened? Well, let's take a look at the crowd again. You see, I think there were some people in that crowd that day that had food but made decisions not to share, not to, do their part. The first person I want you to take a look at that I believe was there with food was someone that wanted to help, but it was going to take too much effort. You see, back then they didn't have cell phones. They didn't have group text. They didn't have megaphones. They didn't have billboards to put up, and I'm going to tear something up here for you. They didn't have all this stuff. Everything worked off word of mouth. They told it, you turn around, tell somebody behind you, tell you behind you, tell you behind you. I think there were some people in that crowd that may have been further back in the crowd, maybe in the very back, whatever, and all of a sudden they get this word that, hey, they're looking for some food. Jesus is asking, the disciples are asking if anybody's got any food. And I think for a minute they said, yeah, I got something. They thought, you know what? In order for me to get that to them, for them to use, I'm going to have to walk a long way. And I'm going to have to cut through this crowd, and that's going to be aggravating, and I'm going to have to put a lot of effort into it. So you know what? I'm just not going to say anything. Matter of fact, I'm going to put my little basket over here and cover it up, and they won't know that I've got anything. That way I won't have to make an effort. I think there may have been some people there that day that were prideful. What do I mean by prideful? I think maybe that they may have considered helping whatever, but all of a sudden maybe Peter walked over to one woman and said, could you help us out? And I don't have anything. And they said, well, I would have helped, but they should have asked me before they asked her. I can't believe that they would ask her before they would ask me. So you know what? If they don't think no more of me of that, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to take my food, and I'm going to hide it. I think there may have been people there that day that because of a lack of faith, they didn't do their part. I think whenever the word got out that they were looking for food and there was a need, I think they may have they may have been willing to, but then they thought about it and they looked at what they had and they said, we don't have a whole lot. I got enough for just me and my family. And if I give this up, or if I give even a portion of it or whatever, I'm not going to have enough. My family's not going to have enough. And I'm not real sure that they're going to be able to feed this whole crowd anyway. So I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to hide what I got, stuff it to the side, cover it up. They're not going to know about it. Then I think you got the people there that day that were just plain stingy. I think they had come that day because they thought something was going on that they could get. They're going to give me something. I'm going to get something out of this. And when the word got out that they were needing help or needing somebody to do something, I think there were people who said, who do they think they are? I came here to get something today. I didn't come here to give them what I got. How dare they think that they can tell me what I can do with what's mine? Well, again, you might ask me, how do I think this came to be? In my crazy thought process, how in the world? Guess what? All of that is going to happen today. It's going to happen all over the world today. Those same people are going to make those same decisions. Those decisions will be made in this room today. You see, what's going to happen at some point today, God's going to ask you to do something. I don't know what it is. That's between you and him. But God is going to ask you to do something. Now, you get to be one of these people. Are you going to be somebody that says, I'd like to help out. I'd like to do something. But you know what? It's going to take some effort on my part. I may have to give up some personal time. I may have to come down here and watch when I don't feel like it. So you know what? I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. I'm not going to do anything. There may be some people here that are prideful. Well, they asked her to do something. They didn't ask me, so I'm not going to volunteer for nothing ever again. I'm not going to do a thing around here. There's probably going to be somebody with some lack of faith. They want me to give. They want me to do this. They want me to do that. I can't do that. I barely got enough for myself. There's probably going to be some people. I hate to say this. Y'all, I hope you don't get mad at me. But there's going to be some people here that are just plain stingy. Who are they to tell me what I can do with what's mine? First of all, let me tell you, it's not yours. But who are they? How can they tell me what I need to do? Now, at this point, there's probably a lot of people grabbing their back pocket right now. And I know the pastor, he hit tithing a couple of weeks ago. And it's not about tithing. It's not. It's a big spectrum of things. It may be tithing. It may be what the Lord put on your heart. It may be taking time to show up for events. Sometimes when we have events, I miss some of y'all. I know we got things to do, but I miss some of y'all. It may be using your talents. It may be volunteering to do things, whatever. So I'm not, before you get upset with me about thinking I'm trying to get in your pocketbook, that's not the case. I've got a little story here to tell you. I use my daddy a lot whenever I preach. Daddy made a big impression on me, and a lot of times I get up here and I choke up and when I think about him and whatnot, but this is not one of those occasions. One of my daddy's, probably one of his favorite times of year at his church was homecoming. Now, most people think, oh, yeah, you get to see people that you hadn't seen in a while and whatnot. That wasn't Daddy's reasoning. Daddy liked to get close to the food table, even be there when people brought food, whatever. And he watched. He was very observant. And at some point, you may be there and he going to get you with an elbow, whatever, but he's going to say, look over yonder. She brought 3 deviled eggs. She's going to take 5 take-home plates home with her. You know? So, Mama, don't be that person. Don't bring as little as you can so you can take as much as you can. You know? So, we've covered all those that are not in the Bible. But we haven't covered the one. Because on that day, and it's in the Bible, I can argue with you on this one. There was one that showed up. There was one that was obedient. He didn't even get counted that day because women and children were not counted. He was not even a number, yet he was obedient. He took what he had and he gave it, not knowing if he'd have any results from it or anything. They don't even name his name in the Bible. But I think the reason we hear about him is because one did so little and so much was done for it. They fed that crowd, 20,000 people. They fed them till they were full and they had 12 baskets left over just because of one obedient. I think God's trying to tell us, if I can do so much with one, just a small one, just imagine how much he could do if everybody was on the same page. Everybody was pulling the line and doing their part. This place would be busting at the seams. We would have finances to do ministry, feed people. I can tell you things that we talked about, halfway houses kind of put people in when they were homeless. But everybody's got to do their part. Now, I've left out a little part of the story because I wanted to come back to it. You see, when I was a child, I always thought, okay, they took these fish and this bread and Jesus broke it, gave it to them. They went out and somehow or another they fed all of these people. In my mind, I want to say, how do you have whatever amount you have right here? Do you look away and all of a sudden, you understand? I don't question God. I know we go on faith, but I want, all of a sudden, do they see it expand in and whatever? Well, I came across something while I was studying for this in Mark chapter, doggone it. It's in Mark, because again, you get an account for all of this. But in Mark, they say, I want to read it so bad. Here it is. It says in Mark 6, verse 41, he kept giving the bread to the disciples so they could distribute it to the people. Now, that may sound simple, but I'm going to tell you what I believe. And it makes sense to me finally. See, I think he had the disciples line up, 12 of them line up. And Jesus had the fish and the bread. And the first one he broke, and he gave him his part. And he said, all right, go, feed them. Do it, you know. And this guy walks off. And while he's doing this, he's doing the same thing when they're in a line. Well, I come off, and I feed you, and I feed you. And all of a sudden, man, I'm gone. I'm like, oh, this didn't go very far. So I come back over here, and I get in the back of the line. Because I want to tell Jesus, I'm done. I'm gone. My stuff's done. When I get to Jesus, he breaks the bread and he breaks the fish and he puts it in my hand again. And all of a sudden, there's more. I didn't see it grow. But when I turn my back and I feed you and I come back, and I believe that day those disciples made trip after trip after trip after trip, over and over and over. And they kept thinking, it's got to be the last time this time. And he filled them up again. And they came out and they fed that crowd till everybody was full and there's 12 baskets left over. At one point in this process, do you think the disciples might have said, hey, wait a minute. There's something going on here. This is a miracle. I've been back here 15 times and I shouldn't have been able to go twice. At what point do you think that might have said, ding, and they got that? Well, let me give you a little hint. Because a couple days later, they're in the same position, and they're out there feeding another crowd of people. This time they had 7 loaves and a couple of fish. Same thing happened all over again. What are we going to do? They find the food. Jesus breaks it. They feed the crowd. And I can't remember now how many of those 5 or 6 baskets left over then. You would think, okay, they get it this time. They've done this twice now. Well, a day or so later, they get on the boat. They're going back home. And they're out in the water. And one of them says, okay, who brought the bread? I didn't bring it. Did you bring it? Did you bring it? You bring it? They ended up having a yeah because nobody brought the bread. And finally, Jesus turns around and says, really? Really? You've seen me do this twice already. And you're going to worry about whether we got food in the boat or not? I say this to make a point to you. How many times have you laid in bed at night praying for something and your jaw hurts because you clench and it's so tight? How many times have you been in the shower with the water cascading over your head and the tears running down with the water and you're praying for something? Just praying for something. How many times have you came down here on your hands and knees and got down and said, Lord, I can't make it another day. You got to do something. You got to help me make this. And guess what? You get to come back again. Maybe your miracle sometimes is given to you in pieces. Maybe sometimes he gives you a little bit at the time. You don't get to see the big picture, the big ta-da, whatever. But you walk away from him like those disciples did. And when you come back empty-handed and you think, I can't do this anymore, he's got a little bit more waiting for you. Now, I don't know if you've seen yourself somewhere in this crowd today. Chad asked me if I was going to be able to stay with the Scandal series. The definition of scandal, scandalous, if you will. Please forgive me for a second while I find it. Basically, it is when something makes a group feel appalled or that something lawful or it's not done on the up and up, and it basically makes people mad about it. Now, if I were to told you this story today and told you about these people, if it were in the Bible, I mean, what I said was word for word in the Bible, you think, how dare these people? How dare they show up and they take? How dare they not share their food? How dare they? We'd see that as a scandal, right? Here's the thing. We do it. We do it. We do it. We do it here all the time. We just don't realize it. So if you will, take a minute. See if you're one of those people in that crowd. Maybe you're the one. I hope so. Maybe you're the one that brought his, did what he was supposed to do. Maybe not. Maybe you're one of the other ones. You need to work on it. Maybe you're just plain stingy. I don't know. But if you would, do a little reflecting right now. Figure out where you are. Could I have a musician, please? If you would, just everybody bow your head, close your eyes for it. Father, thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you for these people that came out to hear your word, Lord. I just hope that I did you some justice. Father, if there's one in here today that needs to be dealt with, someone that you need to speak to, Lord, please just speak to them and tell them what you'd have them to know, Lord. If there's one that doesn't know you, Lord, please let this be the time that they decide to come up here. I pray all these things in your name. Amen. I don't know what the Lord may be putting on your heart, what he might want from you. That's between you and him. It may be money, it may be time, it may be talent. But for some of you, just keep this in mind. The only thing he may want from you is your heart. Thank you.